She's proven to be a champion for biblical values. I'm excited to announce that beginning Monday, August 6th, you can hear Stacy on American Family Radio. Listen for Stacy on the Right weekday afternoons from 2 until 3 Central, just after Focal Point.
Immigration enforcement saves lives. We must enforce the rules against visa fraud, illegal overstay, illegal entry, and other immigration violations and crimes.
A lot of democratic ideas didn't always work. Some were silly.
They want to abolish ICE.
To the modern Democratic Party, Americans are an afterthought.
In fiscal year 2017 alone, ICE arrested more than 127,000 aliens charged or convicted of crimes inside of the United States.
In order to win and maintain power, Democrats understand they need reliable new voters.
Yet leading Democrat politicians have called to abolish ICE.
Immigration is really the only issue that matters to them because packing the electorate is the only way they can regain control of this country. Republicans on the Hill seem okay with this.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome to a brand new week of broadcasting on Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent. As always, program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity.
And that is the happiest Monday voice I've heard all day. I've not heard too many of them, but you're ready to go.
It's a Monday. I've got no idea why I'm that happy. It must be that effervescence that people tell me about. Anyway, the network is American Family Radio Network. Glad to have you in the conversation. Want to jump right into the Word of God. Apparently, Rand Paul, by the way, has decided he's going to vote for Brett Kavanaugh. So that's big news because Rand Paul was unsure where he was going to come out on Kavanaugh. He's now said after meeting with Kavanaugh, he's convinced he can vote for him. You've got some Democrats that are likely to come over and vote for him. You're hearing very little. Chuck Schumer basically has thrown in the towel. He's not whipping the vote count. He's kind of given up on any realistic effort to stop Kavanaugh. So it looks like that thing is going through. That's our winnable war moment for the day. Let's turn our attention to the Word of God. I want to talk a little bit about our future in this life and also our future in the age to come. Now, in Isaiah 55, which is where our reading has taken us, what Isaiah does is he opens chapter 55 almost with the picture of this buffet or this smorgasbord. There's the richest of food laid out, the richest of fare laid out. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago about a vacation that he and his family took. They went to a resort in Cancun where you paid one price, you got into the resort, and then everything after that, you never had to pull your wallet out again for 7 days. They had like 6 or 7 restaurants in this resort, had 3 huge swimming pools. You could go to any of those restaurants you wanted as often as you wanted, whenever you wanted. You could order whatever you wanted, and there was no additional charge. If you were there as somebody's guest, that was a pretty good deal. Now, I remember hearing a story about a guy who had a health scare when he was about 65. Have some heart issues, and so the doctor kind of read him the Riot Act and said, you got to change your diet, you got to take care of yourself if you're going to extend your life. And so his wife started insisting that he had to start eating her bran muffins for breakfast, and then there was celery and kale for lunch, and so forth and so on. So anyway, about 10 years later, when they're both 75, they both die in the same automobile accident. They both go to heaven at the same time, and St. Peter's there to greet them. And he says, Harriet and Fred, come on in. I want to kind of show you around. This is the age to come. You're in this place because of your faith in Christ. I want to welcome you here. First thing, I want to show you where you're going to live. Takes them to this palatial mansion. I mean, it is palatial mansion. and shows him around. And Fred says, "Oh man, Peter, this is nice, but there's no possible way I can afford this." And Peter says, "You don't understand. It's all paid for. It's all yours. This is yours, free." Guy shakes his head. That's pretty cool. Now Peter says, "Let me show you where you're going to eat." Takes him over to this huge kind of buffet style restaurant and says, "Look, you can eat here." And I mean, the tables are just loaded with food. You can get fresh anything. You can get bacon and eggs. You can get steak and eggs. You can go back at New York Steak Strip at 11:30 at night. And this is where you're going to eat. And Fred says, "Man, I don't know, Peter. I'd love to eat here, but there's no way I can afford all this food." He says, "No, you don't get it. It's all paid for. It's yours." And so then the last thing Peter says, "Look, hey, by the way, Fred, I know you like to play golf. Let me take you out and show you where you're going to play golf here in the age to come." So it takes him out, and there's this absolutely spectacular championship golf course right out his back door. He can hop in the golf cart coming out his back door and zip right out to the first tee. And it is spectacular. Trees and lakes and fairways and wildlife bounding across the fairways and so forth. And is this where we're going to play golf? And Fred says, "Man, Peter, I'd love to play here, but there's no way I could afford the membership fee." And then Peter says, "No, you don't understand. This is all provided for. This is all paid for." And so he takes him back to their house, and all of a sudden Fred starts stomping around the kitchen. And if you could swear in the age to come, he'd be doing that. But he was furious. And so Peter says, "Fred, settle down. What is the problem?" And Fred looks at his wife and says, "Harriet, if it wasn't for your bran muffins, I could have been here 10 years ago." So, and that's what Isaiah is talking about. Listen to this description. "Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and he who has no money, come, buy, and eat." Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. So that's the provision that we get in the age to come. And then Isaiah asks this question, good question for us today. "Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen diligently to me," that's the Lord speaking, "and eat what is good. Delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear, that your soul may live." So when we bathe in the Word of God, when we embrace the Word of God, when we ingest the Word of God, we are feeding on the richest of fare, and that's what satisfies the soul. It satisfies us internally in soul and spirit in heart in a way that no amount of money could ever do. Now, as more and more people in a land seek God, more and more of them inclined to hear His word, listen attentively and obey, they find life for their souls, in their hearts, their minds, their spirits, where it really counts. And the word starts to get out to people in the surrounding nations. And this is what he says in verses 3 and 5. He says in verse 5, "Behold, you shall call a nation that you do not know, and a nation that did not know you shall run to you because of the Lord your God and of the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you." There will be something about us that will be so compelling and so magnetic that people will be drawn to us to find out what the source of our life is. Isaiah says that will even happen with nations. That's what's happened here in America because we were founded and grew up as a Christian nation. So people from all over the world have been drawn to our shores because of what God has done for us, the way he's glorified this nation. But that glow, ladies and gentlemen, it is dimming due to our rebellion. That's why we need a profound nationwide spiritual awakening. Well, let's go to time rate for companies that bring their wealth back to these shores. They pay a one-time tax, and they're not going to be taxed on it again. So it gives an incentive for giant corporations like Apple and others to keep their money in the United States. A lot of them were taking it overseas and parking it there because the corporate tax rates were so much lower in other countries. And so it was a disincentive to invest in America on the part of American companies. Donald Trump and the Republicans fixed that. However, one of the things that's in this bill that's just now surfacing, that's what I mean by you got to pass it to find out what's in it. And now people are finding that what is in this bill is a first-time tax on churches. And it's in there. The Republicans put it in there. And it's in there to provide a 21% tax on certain employee benefits that churches would provide. Now, I think it has to do with transportation and stuff like that. And you get some, may not even touch a lot of churches that are in the suburbs, but you get churches or you get nonprofits. I think they wrote this with nonprofit hospitals in town. You know, I went to MD Anderson for my cancer surgery, and that's right in downtown or right in the middle of Houston. And I mean, parking downtown is at an absolute premium. You got to pay through the nose, whatever that means, in order to park down there. So we were staying at a hotel some distance away, and the hotel provided a shuttle. There were so many people that were getting medical treatment at MD Anderson that most of the people staying at the hotel were doing that. So they had an everyday shuttle, ran all the time back and forth to the hospital. So this is designed. Now, I don't know if MD Anderson's for-profit or non-profit. I don't even know. But some hospitals are non-profit. And so they can provide these perks, these benefits, parking passes or parking spaces, and the doctors and the people who work there don't have to pay for them. That is a perk. Now, if it's a for-profit hospital, then somebody's got to pay taxes on that parking spot or that parking privilege or whatever. And nonprofits were skating on that. These nonprofit hospitals, their people didn't have to pay taxes on that. The hospitals didn't have to pay taxes on that. And now what the Republicans did, they slipped this thing in there and said, no, even if you're a nonprofit, you still got to pay this 21% tax on that benefit for your employees. Now, the problem is they extended it to churches. Let's be fair, make sure everybody's under the same umbrella. So now there are churches that could be located in a downtown location that will be paying, that will be taxed on this perk that they provide for their employees. And churches don't have the forms for this. They don't have the accounting software for this because this is something that they've never been asked to do. And you know who's not interested in fixing this problem? The Republicans are not interested in fixing this problem. They put it in here. And now it's come to the surface, and it's the Democrats that are leading the charge to get this thing repealed. A lot of these Democrat congressmen belong to sizable black churches, and they don't want this tax being levied on churches. So the Republicans are just laissez-faire about this. You know, it's one of those deals, it's kind of the camel's nose under the tent. You know, there may not be a lot of churches that get zinged by this initially, but it is the principle of the thing that's the problem. Once government decides that they can tax a church in this one way, then it's not long before they tax it in a second way and then a third way. And pretty soon, churches are under all of the same tax restrictions that apply to for-profit institutions, even though churches are nonprofit. They don't make any money, and typically they have been given tax-exempt status because of the good that they do for the community at no cost to the community. You know, they provide spiritual nourishment, they provide spiritual feeding, they provide the opportunity for people to worship God, to nurture their relationship with God. They have ministries that strengthen marriages, ministries to teenagers, ministries to children, ministries to couples, ministry to college students. So they do a tremendous amount of good, and nobody in the community has to pay for that. The church members themselves provide these ministries to the community. So once that ceiling is broached, I mean, government always does this. That's why you never can accept a single tax that transgresses some bright line, because that's just the beginning of the end. So you got Democrats out there. Emmanuel Cleaver from Missouri, very liberal guy, but he's a pastor in a black church in Missouri. They're leading the way, the Black Caucus. the Black Congressional Caucus, leading the effort to revoke these things, is the Republicans could care less about this whole deal. Some more swampage chewing up our Republicans in Congress. Now, we saw in Isaiah 55, if a nation is comprised of enough people who listen to God, who incline their ear to God, who listen to His Word, who feed on His Word, and receive the richest of spiritual fare that comes through the Word of God, it's not long before other nations in the world will run to them. Not walk to them, Isaiah says, but they will run to them. They will recognize there is something so distinct and unique about that nation. We've got to go find out what it is, and we've got to get there in a hurry, because what they've got is something that we as a nation need. Now, that's been the role of America since we were founded. People from all over the world have come to America because there's something distinctive and unique. There's a light that's being shed from this land out all across the world that draws people to us. And that light is the fact that we were founded as a Christian nation and built on Christian principles. I'm looking at a piece on Alex de Tocqueville. He was a social scientist from France, and he came to America in 1831 to travel the whole country and do kind of a sociological study of America. Now remember, this guy's from France. Now, he was born in 1805, but the French Revolution still would be familiar to him, and the French Revolution was an anti-God revolution. I mean, they were killing the priests, they were closing the churches, they were looting the churches, they put a prostitute in one of the main cathedrals in Paris and announced that she was the goddess of reason, and everybody was to come and worship her. So that's what the French Revolution was all about. And Alex de Tocqueville didn't know anything different. So he comes to America, and he's recording his observations and what he learned and what he saw. Here's what he said. Upon my arrival in the United States, the religious aspect, meaning the Christian aspect of the country, was the first thing that struck my attention. And the longer I stayed there, the more I perceived the great, listen to this, the great political consequences resulting from this new state of things, Christianity being the supreme religion in a nation, to which I was unaccustomed. Hadn't seen anything like this in France. Here's what it goes on to say. In France, I had almost always seen the spirit of religion and the spirit of freedom marching in opposite directions. But in America, I found they were intimately united and that they reigned in common over the same country. They brought with them a form of Christianity which I cannot better describe than by styling it a democratic and republican religion. You know, the left is all a gaga over the separation of church and state. See how much separation of church and state you can find in de Tocqueville's description of the early United States. From the earliest settlement of the immigrants, he writes, politics and religion contracted an alliance which has never been dissolved. And again, by religion, he means Christianity. Could just as easily have written, from the earliest settlements of the immigrants, politics and Christianity contracted an alliance which has never been dissolved. Religion or Christianity in America must be regarded as the foremost of the political institutions of that country, for it facilitates the use of freedom. He goes on to say, moreover, all the sects, that's S-E-C-T-S, all the denominations, that's just a word for denominations, all the denominations of the United States are comprised within the great unity of Christianity, and Christian morality is everywhere the same. So you might have Moravians and Quakers and the Amish and Mennonites and Episcopalians and Methodists and Congregationalists and Baptists and so forth. but the Christian morality everywhere is the same. Why? Because it was drawn from the 10 Commandments of God. Everybody in America universally agreed that these were the standards by which life is to be governed. Now, what do you have when you have everybody in a country identifying with, embracing, and agreeing that there is one moral code that ought to govern this people? What do you get? You get unity. You get unity as a people. You get stability. Everybody's seeking to embrace and live by the same moral standard, and it provides tremendous unity. We all then know who the bad guys are, and we all know that what they're doing is something they should not do. And that transcendent moral code, you have to have something. If you're going to have unity, you have to have something that transcends everything that normally divides us, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's education. You have to have something above all of that, an overarching, transcendent something, some principle, some ideal, some standard that everybody looks to, and then everybody is looking to the same standard, draws them closer together, and your society can live in harmony and tranquility. And that's what Christian morality did in the United States. So, ladies and gentlemen, do not let people lie to you and tell you that this was not and never has been a Christian nation. It was precisely founded as a Christian nation. Ask Alex de Tocqueville, wasn't even from here. And he just got bowled over by the prevalence of Christianity in early America. He says this: in the United States, the sovereign authority is religious or Christian. There is no country, he says, in the whole world where the Christian religion retains a greater influence than in America. America is still the place where the Christian religion has kept the greatest real power over men's souls. It's the most enlightened and the freest. Be right back. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. In the last program, I talked to you about North Platte, Nebraska, and their tremendous hospitality to our soldiers during World War II. Well, the American spirit is still alive in North Platte. A few weeks ago, the Arkansas Field Artillery Brigade of the National Guard was going back from Wyoming, its summer training, back to Arkansas. And they were going to stop in North Platte as they moved through 21 busloads. And they inquired where the North Platte could feed them. North Platte said yes. When the soldiers got there, they fully expected to eat at a fast food joint. But as each bus arrived over a 2-day period, the soldiers stepped out to be greeted by lines of cheering people holding signs of thanks. They weren't at a fast food restaurant. They were at North Platte's event center, which had been opened and decorated especially for them. The soldiers entered the event center to the aroma of steaks grilling, and they were served steak sandwiches, ham sandwiches, turkey sandwiches, deviled eggs, salad, and fruit. Local church groups baked pies, brownies, and cookies. Mayor David Livingston stood at the door for 2 days and shook every soldier's hand. Mr. Livingston had served in the Air Force in Vietnam and came home to no thanks. Now, he said, as he shook the hands of the soldiers, I don't know whether those moments were more important for them or for me. I knew I had to be there. When it came time to settle up, the Army, after all, had money budgeted for the food. The 142nd Field Artillery was told, no thanks, it's on North Platte. The American spirit is still alive, at least in North Platte. I don't know about you, but this story inspired me. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net. afa.net.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point. American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Sharing a little bit of my Western heritage with you in that greeting. Good to have you in the conversation today. Do not forget, make a note of it, a week from today, Monday, August 6th, this program will be trimmed back to 1 hour. Focal Point will be on from 1 to 2, and you'll be hearing Stacy Washington, Stacy on the right, from 2 to 3. Second hour, normally occupied by Focal Point, will now be shifted over to make room for Stacy Washington. Stacy on the right. That begins a week from today. So we're just going to have to figure out how to wedge as much content into that first hour as we possibly can. Now, I can talk pretty fast when I've got a mind to. In fact, I was trying to show the guys last week that I used to be able to talk faster than anybody I had ever met. You know how those guys at the end of those drug commercials?
Yeah.
They got to tell you all of the side effects, and so they try to rush through all of them. Yeah. I could talk almost as fast as those guys. So
you do sometimes when we hit about the last 5 seconds of the segment.
Yeah. See how many words I can wedge into the last line as I possibly can. There was a limerick to that effect. There once was a poet from Japan whose poetry no one could scan. It's, what did he say? I know this is so. I don't know. I forget what his line was. But then the last line was, I always try to get as many words into the last line as I can. So that was a poet from Japan whose poetry no one could scan.
Brian, you'll never have to worry about me talking fast.
No. Yeah, you grew up down here in the South. It just have kind of a, I've told people this before. When I came to grad school, I came to Dallas in 1975 to go to Dallas Theological Seminary. I was down here for 1 year. Well, I mean like 9 months. I went back to the Bay Area and I worked in retail that summer, so I had a lot of interaction with people. And I had never been in the South. I mean, never even physically present in the South, really in my whole life, except maybe for one visit to Dallas for a few days back in 1974, something like that. Anyway, people were asking me where I was from. I'd only been down here for 9 months and had already picked up some of the mannerisms, and I realized, you know what it is? It's the Southern style speaking is a very relaxed way of speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just kind of at ease, kind of puts you at ease, just very relaxed. Nobody's in a hurry. Nobody's in a rush, to get anywhere. So I said, well, I guess I just picked up enough to make you think I was from the South. But I ain't. But I ain't from the South. All right, let's...
It is true, though.
Yeah.
It is true. Very, very intentional way of speaking.
Yeah. So if we have a word race, Rob, you saying I'm going to beat you?
100 to 1 probably. Southern slang or pattern of speech is just comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just sort of ramble and ease through it and ease into it. And
if you get there, you get there. Yeah. If you don't, you had a pleasant conversation trying to get there, even though you didn't make it. Well, people would ask me, this is completely off topic here, but people would ask me when I moved down here, my friends from Boise would say, well, what's it like down in the South? I mean, the view that we have of the South was so stereotypical. It was like you had to get a passport to go there, So they wondered what it was like, and I said, the main thing I will tell you, everything you have ever heard about Southern hospitality is true.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how gracious people were, how friendly they were, how hospitable they were. So that was that we found was all true.
I found out that very quickly that they could be insulting you in a conversation, and you end up thanking them for it in the end. Yeah, they're so nice about it.
They're that polite.
They're so nice.
Bless his heart.
Yeah, bless his heart. That's a Southern way of saying that guy is a total idiot. Bless his cotton-picking heart. Yeah. All right. I want to just mention Target. We've had this boycott going for Target. If you haven't joined it, please do it. You can go to our website. I think we've got an action alert about it today, so you can easily find it and sign the petition committing yourself to boycott Target. Got another big shopping day coming up. Labor Day is big for back-to-school stuff, although schools are already going to be back in, most places are going to be back in session by then. But we're encouraging you to boycott Target because of this insane policy they have that allows men to go into women's dressing areas. And it's specifically, their intention is to make transgenders welcome. Our concern isn't about transgenders in Target. From the beginning, it's always been with men who would use their insane policy to allow men to go into private areas in Target that should be reserved exclusively for women, like bath restrooms and the dressing areas. Well, here we got 2 incidents from the Detroit area over the weekend. Sterling Heights, a guy in a Sterling Heights Target changing room taking pictures of 2 sisters in a changing room, and apparently the same guy did the same thing earlier at a Target store in Auburn Hills. One of the women said it's very creepy. Another one said it makes you nervous to go in there because you don't know what people are going to do. Notice both of those were at Targets. You know, he didn't go to a Target and do it and then go find a Kmart or a Sears and do it. He went from one Target store to the next Target store because he knew he could target vulnerable females with his camera. So video voyeurism continues unabated at Target stores. Don't shop there. Encourage your friends to do the same. By the way, just a note I got in passing, this is not apropos of anything, but I did not realize that Tilton, Hawaii, it was an article about the Republican Party making kind of a comeback in the state of Hawaii. But the Republican Party is in such bad shape. They have 25 seats in their state Senate. You know how many Republicans are in the Hawaii State Senate? Like a 0. Wow. Not one. There is not one Republican in the Hawaii State Senate. And they have a 51-seat state house. You know how many Republicans? 5. 1 out of every 10 in their state legislature. Now I want to start with this. This is another little winnable war moment. Most of you are familiar with Dak Prescott. Outstanding quarterback, great college career here at Mississippi State, in the running for the Heisman Trophy, I think his junior or senior year. Anyway, very gifted quarterback, strong arm, very nimble feet, strong, powerful runner. And he's been the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he basically sent Tony Romo into retirement. So anyway, this national anthem thing is kicking up again. The Dallas Cowboys have decided that they're all going to en masse. They're going to go out there and stand for the national anthem. And basically, Jerry Jones says, you want a job on my team, that's what you're going to do. So they've said, yes, sir, Mr. Jones, and they're going to go out there and do it. Denver Broncos apparently have joined them. They've agreed they're going to do the same thing. Now, the NFL front office, they're dithering around. Those people have so little in the way of character and convictions, they don't know what they're doing. But anyway, here is Dak Prescott, clip number 1, talking about what he does about the national anthem.
I never protest. I never protest during the anthem, and I don't think that's the time or the venue to do so. The game of football has always brought me such a peace, and I think it does the same for a lot of people. A lot of people playing the game, a lot of people watching the game, a lot of people that have any impact of the game. So when you bring such a controversy to the stadium, to the field, to the game, it takes away from that. It takes away from the joy and to the love that football brings a lot of people.
All right, so that's Dak Prescott. Not the venue, not the place for it. I never protest during the anthem, not the time or the venue to do so. Well, that's a leader for you right there. That's a team leader. He's the quarterback coming out and saying, look, this is what I do, and this is what the whole team is going to wind up doing. You know, I think the reason the NFL decided to retreat and revisit that is there was one team that was prepared to pay the fines for their players. You can protest all you want, and instead of you having to pay the fine out of your pocket, we'll pay it for you. And then somebody else was saying, you protest, I'm going to cut you from the team. That might have even been Jerry Jones. So you had NFL owners from one end of the spectrum to the other on this deal in the NFL because they lack conviction. They don't have character. They don't have conviction. They don't have principles that matter to them. They don't know what to do. They're just wandering around. You know, it's like blind guides leading the blind. That's what Jesus said. You know, if you don't govern yourself by some abiding standard, some abiding set of principles, you'll just wander around lost, hoping you bump into a solution somewhere out there in the wilderness. Now, I've got a few stories I'm going to share with you. I may come back to some of these, but I'm going to hit you here kind of in a hurry with some stories that I ran across over the weekend that I thought were very illustrative. Here is our socialism update for the day. You know, socialism has been a socialist country from whenever, and the socialists there have just ripped that country off. They've bled that country dry. Chavez's daughter's the richest person in Venezuela, worth billions of dollars. And you know how bad things are in Venezuela because of socialism. People in Venezuela are butchering their donkeys to eat them. They're eating donkeys in Venezuela. So that's the socialism update for the day. It's never worked anywhere. As Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism, eventually you run out of other people's money, and when you do, you got to start eating donkeys. So that's what's happening in Venezuela. Here's a guy, you know, looking at the polling numbers on Donald Trump, back up to 47%, I believe. In all right, here we go. I think I'm getting the from the executive producer, saving my bacon. Here comes the poem I was reading you about. Let me finish off with Trump. You know, his polling numbers, according to Rasmussen, I think back up around 47%. So they can't kill this guy. Like the Energizer Bunny, you can't kill him. And one guy says, you know, people talking about the Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump. I'm gonna propose him for the Nobel Prize for Physics, because this guy is defying the laws of gravity. Everybody says what goes up must come down. Not happening with Donald Trump. All right, here we go. There once was a man from Japan whose limericks no one could stand. When asked why this is so, he said, I don't know, but maybe it's because I always try to cram as many words into the last line as I can. There we go. That's the authentic version of that limerick. So my thanks to the executive producer. So again, let's see, squeeze in one more little factoid here. You know, in Austin, Texas, they started reviewing a Confederate plaque. Well, I'll tell you when we come back after the break what's going on in Austin, Texas. You want to stick around for this. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Be right back.
The problem in our day is very similar to the problem in Elijah's day, if I might make that statement. It's not so much that we have rejected God, but that so many of us have made him such a small part of our lives. He's our Sunday God.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series, Someone Like You, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Netflix continues to ignore the outcry about 13 Reasons Why. The American Family Association, along with Parents Television Council and several other pro-family groups, have reached out to the streaming service urging the cancellation of their program. Netflix has not even responded to our letter. Instead, they released an even more vile Season 2 and are producing Season 3. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings says their program is engaging and that it fosters discussion of taboo topics like suicide and sexual assault. But at what cost? 14-year-old Anna Bright and several other teens have committed suicide after watching the show. Hastings calls our objections propaganda. Does he feel the profitability of his company is worth more than the lives damaged or lost because of his show? Please sign our petition to Netflix, learn more, and share our action alert when you visit afa.net. And pray Reed Hastings will recognize the dangers of 13 Reasons Why.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, talking about sky jumping on the break.
Yeah.
Rob's son went sky jumping just last weekend and lived to tell about it. You know, Debbie and I went to see that Mission Impossible movie Friday night, which is a really, really great movie. I think you would like it. As far as I remember, wasn't anything that was objectionable for anybody over the age of 13. I don't remember if there was a little bit of profanity there. There might have been, so don't quote me on that. But anyway, very entertaining movie. And one of the scenes in the movie, he's jumping out of this cargo plane.
Right.
And he had to jump out of that plane and do a skydive 106 times in order to get everything just right on that thing, because they only had like 3 minutes. They had to get the shot at sundown, so there's only 3 minutes of every day that they could actually, where the light was right to actually film the scene. So 106 parachute jumps out of the back of a cargo plane to get that scene.
I told Jason before he went and did this jump, I said, I'm along with my dad. I have never seen any reason to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Yeah.
So, but he said he always wanted to do it, and he said it was totally exhilarating, and he'd do it again. So, who knows? He may be a future skydiver.
There you go. Okay. Just a little bit more kind of a news scan. I mentioned what's going on in Austin, Texas. They have a city council that's reviewing their connection with Confederate history. And my complaint from the beginning of this whole thing, it was my complaint absolutely from day one. I do not think these statues, I do not think these plaques, I do not think these monuments should be messed with. I think they should be left alone. Because when we start taking them down, inevitably we're going to take the next thing down and the next thing. And my point is we're losing our history. We are depriving ourselves of our own history when we do this. It's much better if you think there's a problem that the guy on the statue, for some reason, he doesn't represent values that you think are important. Well, there's an opportunity to talk about that. I mean, that guy's obviously there because he accomplished something pretty significant. We want to recognize that. Did he do some bad things? Yeah, a lot of people have done a lot of bad things. Every one of us falls sins and are sinners and have fallen short of the glory of God. But leave that there and then use it as a teaching lesson if you want. But don't just obliterate American history in the process. Well, here, Austin is an example. Austin itself, Texas is a conservative state. Austin is about as blue as it gets. So they started with the city commission. We want you to go out there and we want you to evaluate the Confederate places and place names and stuff like that in Austin. So they started with this little Confederate plaque on some building or someplace downtown. Decided they got to get rid of that. Then they found 10 Confederate streets that needed to be renamed. They've already renamed a couple of them. Robert E. Lee Boulevard got turned into something completely else. And Robert E. Lee was against slavery. He was against slavery. His sympathies were with the Union. In fact, Abraham Lincoln tried to recruit him to lead the Union armies. And Robert E. Lee had to weigh that situation out back and forth. But finally, he decided he had to fight with the South because that's where his family lived. He went to war to protect his family and those to whom he was related by blood. So anyway, whatever you do, Robert E. Lee's not a guy that you want to diss. I've told this story before, and I'm again distracting myself here. This will not happen next week. Trust me. With only 1 hour, we're going to stay laser beam focused as only I can do. And this listening at it, what I can do when I'm laser focused. Nothing will distract me. Yeah. Nothing, not even talking about how I can't be distracted. Not even that will distract me. But there was a scene in the movie Gettysburg, which is about the Civil War, obviously. Great movie, outstanding movie, historically accurate. I mean, right down. They even filmed it at Gettysburg. And they had all these monuments they had to kind of conceal with shrubs and stuff while Pickett's charge is charging across the landscape there. And there was a real revival that swept through the Confederate armies in the Civil War. Not a lot of people have read about that, know about it. I've read a couple of books on it, and it was a profound spiritual awakening through the entire Confederate army. In fact, that's why I believe the South today is still the Bible Belt of America. It all goes all the way back to the work that God did, the awakening he did among the Confederate troops in the Civil War. Robert E. Lee would they would have Bible studies around the campfire at night. They would have revival meetings in their military tents, and Robert E. Lee would occasionally show up at one of these events. Anyway, the Southern soldiers were sitting around a campfire one night talking about Darwin's theory of evolution, Remember, his book, Origin of Species, was published in 1859. So it was fairly new in 1863. And so they're talking about it. And one guy says to the other, his other guys in the circle, says, you know, you might think that I was descended from an ape. And I might think that you was descended from an ape. But I will defy any man who says that General Robert E. Lee was descended from an ape. One of my all-time favorite scenes in the movies. All right, let me get back on track using that laser-like focus I was just telling you about. Oh, yeah. And by the way, Stephen F. Austin they're going to try to rename the whole town. I even forgot to get to that. They're going to try to rename the whole town. They want to change the name of the town. Crime evidently, he is known as the father of Texas. That's his nickname. Just like George Washington is the father of our country, Stephen F. Austin, he was a hero in the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, or no, Mexican-American War, and he's known as the father of Texas, and they want to obliterate any mention of him ever existing. You know, we talked about this last week about what happened to Facebook and the way their stock plunged in one day like 19%. And the market cap, the value of their company went down $119 billion in one day, which is equivalent to the annual GDP of the country of Kuwait. Wow. So Facebook had a higher GDP than the country of Kuwait. And that's a relatively prosperous Muslim nation with oil and all that kind of stuff. You might have heard, and we'll come back to this in the second hour, Donald Trump has pledged to shut down the government if he does not get funding for the border wall. Now, the deadline for that is September 28th. That's when the fiscal year ends. And if you don't have that in an appropriations bill before September 28th, and you try to run through in some kind of an omnibus, or you try to bring an appropriations bill to him that's supposed to have funding for the wall and doesn't, Donald Trump says, I'll veto it. He didn't use those words, but that's how you shut down the government. Just going to veto it. And they can't overwrite it. They don't have enough votes, I don't believe, to be able to overwrite it. So we'll see. He made this promise last summer about this same time. Said, you don't fund the wall, I'm gonna shut the government down. Didn't do it. And then he said in the process, I'm never going to sign another bill like this again. So the president has really put it out there. I mean, he's thrown down on the rest of Congress. I want money for my border wall. If I don't get it, I'm going to make trouble. Whole government, I'm willing to shut the whole thing down. So it's my sincere hope. And that's one of the things I want to hear about when we go to the phones at the bottom of the next hour. Or what I want to hear from you is whether you want Trump to shut down the government if he doesn't get funding for the border wall. Now, I want him to. That's what I want. He campaigned on that. That's why people voted for him. That's why he's the president, because he pledged to build a wall and get a handle on immigration coming across our southern border. So I want him to do it. I want him to shut this place down. I am so cotton picking, sick and tired of the swamp. I'm sick and tired of the lack of spine, the spinelessness, and all that kind of stuff. I want him to shut that place down. I mean, for a long time, shut it down. And don't forget, the military gets paid. Postal service continues to operate. Mail still gets delivered. And all of the government workers that are laid off get reimbursed for the time they missed. So it's a paid vacation for them. They get made whole for everything, every payroll they missed during the course of the government shutdown. So it's just a paid vacation for them. Everybody gets made whole. So anyway, let's shut that place down. That's my vote. Now, we're going to talk about this at the first segment after the top of the hour. You might have heard about this polar bear that got shot on Spitsbergen Island, far north. It's just kind of off the coast of Greenland. And there's been absolute uproar over the shooting of this polar bear. We'll give you the details about why the polar bear was shot, and then we'll have a little focal point flashback, which we can do while we still have 2 hours of time. I mean, that gives me time to go on these these Japanese poetry scans.
We've gone from there to grizzly bears.
The grizzly bears. So we cover the spectrum.
Skydiving.
Skydiving. That's recreation. You have
Civil War.
Japanese poetry. That's the arts. You have the Civil War. That's warfare. So anyway, you can cover it all.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to talk about this shooting of this grizzly bear and have a little focal point flashback. And then one last thing, but as we go to break, to show you how far Sharia compliance has gone in the UK, that country's become virtually completely Sharia compliant. They've had these Muslim rape gangs operating in the UK for years. They're just now forming a commission to try to study the ethnic background of these rape gangs. But they know from their own statistics that 86% of the males that are involved in these rape gangs, whether it's kids or teenagers or women, are Muslims. They already know that. Those are the statistics. Anyway, the United Kingdom now is only accepting Muslim refugees, if you can believe it. They've got a crime rate that is through the ceiling because of Muslims, but they are specifically rejecting Christian refugees from Syria and only accepting Muslim refugees from Syria. All right, that's it for hour number 1 here of Focal Point. We'll be back with hour number 2 after the news, so don't go anywhere. Stick around, stay with us. Just one last detail on the Muslim thing in UK. They've accepted 1,112 Muslim refugees and precisely 0 Christian refugees. Be back after the news. Stay with us.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio. You can be among the first to receive updates about changes and special events coming up in our programming, and always keep up with the things you might have missed with American Family Radio's weekly newsletter. Every Friday, you'll receive an email with a recap of the week's highlights from your favorite broadcasts, as well as important information about special programs in the near future. Add yourself to our mailing list at afr.net. Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. Firefighters continue battling multiple blazes in Northern California, which have caused thousands of evacuations. Jeff Paul reports from Redding, California.
Car fire is now 20% contained, but it has destroyed hundreds of structures, many of which are homes. Firefighters say they have a lot of work ahead of them. We've seen several crews out today going around mopping up any potential hot spots. Firefighters say this wildfire is extremely unpredictable, and that's part of the reason why they have evacuated tens of thousands of people. For some folks, it was a tough choice when deciding to leave because their home is everything that they've worked for in life.
A border enforcement group says it is an absolute outrage that a federal judge has ruled that an illegal alien who delivered pizza without a valid driver's license cannot be deported. Chad Groening has more.
The Ecuadorian native made headlines when he was detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in June after he failed to provide proper identification while delivering a pizza at an Army base in Brooklyn, New York. And a subsequent background check revealed Pablo Villavicencio Calderon had been issued a final deportation order in 2010. But those facts didn't matter to U.S. District Judge Paul Crotty, who said that the fact that the illegal was a good guy was enough cause to excuse him from imminent deportation. Ira Melman is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform.
This judge seems to think that the law ought to be enforced based on how he feels, not based on what the law says. Who cares what he sees or doesn't see? That's not the issue. The issue is whether the government has the authority to enforce the law, and clearly it does.
Melman says the employer should be held accountable for allowing the illegal alien to deliver pizza without a valid driver's license.
If they are hiring somebody who does not have a driver's license, presumably does not have insurance, to go deliver pizza on their behalf, then they bear some culpability. If you really want to address the problem of illegal immigration, you go after the employers.
Melman says this case is emblematic how illegal aliens and their attorneys abuse our legal system by tying it up in knots and delaying the deportation process. I'm Chad Groening.
Meanwhile, in another case of a judge legislating from the bench, a federal judge says Wisconsin has to pay for body mutilation surgery on 2 transgender men.
The two men who want to become women sued the state in federal court, saying denying them body-altering surgery to treat their gender dysphoria violates the Affordable Care Act. U.S. District Judge William Connolly agreed. Jolene Appling of Wisconsin Family Action says activists are at work here.
It's not biological, it's ideological. And I believe this is a test case to try to get it to the Supreme Court to get a decision that says, hey, these folks are in a position where they have to have these kinds of surgeries, and yes, taxpayers have to pay for it. Because they have been so forceful with this and so successful in convincing people that if you are part of that acronym, that you deserve special treatment.
She says the science is less than convincing that having so-called gender reassignment surgery is the best treatment for someone with the mental disorder.
People more and more are coming out and saying, look, I had the surgery and it didn't change how I feel. It didn't change my outlook, but it did mutilate my body.
Appling sees a slippery slope ahead.
My real concern is when we have kids going down this path. And you can be sure with the approach that's going on here that eventually there will be kids who will be low income, and we as taxpayers will again be complicit in paying for a surgery that is going to forever mutilate their bodies.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
And the Department of Justice has created a task force to protect religious liberty.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions says the Religious Liberty Task Force is a direct result of a memo he signed in October. It included 20 guiding principles that the federal government can use to protect religious liberty in employment and other areas. At the Religious Liberty Summit at the DOJ today, he said in recent years the cultural climate in the U.S. has become less hospitable to people of faith.
Many Americans have felt that their freedom to practice their faith has been under attack.
Sessions also says the task force will get feedback from the public and religious communities. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
For well over a century, secular progressives in the United States have worked to alter the very nature of our republic.
Progressives had no problem with saying we can leave the Declaration of Independence behind. For the progressives, there are no longer any God-given natural rights.
AFA Executive Vice President Ed Vitagliano helps you understand the progressive threat to the American Republic. Get your copy of this powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute at afastore.net.
Immigration enforcement saves lives. We must enforce the rules against visa fraud, illegal overstay, illegal entry, and other immigration violations and crimes.
A lot of Democratic ideas didn't always work. Some were silly.
They want to abolish ICE.
To the modern Democratic Party, Americans are an afterthought.
In fiscal year 2017 alone, ICE arrested more than 127,000 aliens charged or convicted of crimes inside of the United States.
In order to win and maintain power, Democrats understand they need reliable new voters.
Yet leading Democrat politicians have called to abolish ICE.
Immigration is really the only issue that matters to them because packing the electorate is the only way they can regain control of this country. Republicans on the Hill seem okay with this.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Don't forget, a week from right now, next Monday, August 6th, will be the premiere of Stacey Washington's program, Stacey on the Right, here on American Family Radio Network. So she'll be on right after the first hour of Focal Point. You won't have to go anywhere. You can leave your radio dial right where it is and pick up Stacey on the Right. So that's a week from today at this precise moment in time. Now, a couple of environmental updates. Got a story in here about the latest trend in pets. Never heard about this, is having sharks. Yeah, people are putting like aquariums in their houses. Home shark tanks are in, Wall Street Journal. They got here's a story about a home in L.A., palatial home. They decided to fill their home with sharks, 500-gallon aquarium. The article makes the point in the headline that the only problem with sharks is they make terrible pets.
Yeah, I bet.
Who could have seen that coming? You know, one of them is they're liable to bite you when you're trying to feed them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, who could have seen that coming? So anyway, the tank plus the sharks and other fish that live there. What other fish are going to live in a shark tank? And how long are they going to live? That would be the question.
It would be a good place to hide the jewelry, though. Just drop it in the fish tank.
Yeah,
you know
yeah. Burger comes in. I dare you to go in and get that jewelry.
Get it, yeah. I guess they use feeder fish. You know, like some of your guppies are used as feeder fish for some of the bigger fish.
Yeah, but don't the sharks eat the bigger fish? I mean, they're talking about other fish that are living apparently in the same aquarium. So anyway, it costs about $60,000. $1,600 to $2,000 a month on maintenance and food.
Yikes.
Like frozen krill and shrimp. Feeding times, it says, are perilous for the tank's other inhabitants.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is the deal there. The guy, this specialist, has simpler instructions for shark owners who like to hand feed the sharks. By holding a piece of meat above the water, he says, we recommend using tongs. So, all right. Let me get to my environmental stack here. Pull it out. You know, this story out of Spitsbergen, there's a German cruise line, and it's this island that's off the coast of Greenland. It's called Spitsbergen Island. And this German cruise line, I'm not going to have time for this. We'll have to save it for after coming out of the break. I'll get it set up, and then we can run it coming right out of the break. Let me do another environmental story first, and then I can use remaining time to set up the flashback soundbite. Anyway, there's a complaint now from environmentalists. One of the things about environmentalists that you have to recognize is they worship Gaia. This is not an exaggeration. They worship the earth, Gaia with a capital G. And their conscience is deeply offended. Their religious principles are deeply offended anytime man puts his imprint on the face of Mother Gaia. That is sacrilege. Any kind of development to them is sacrilege. It's a violation of what is holy and sacred. And their holy grail is to have an earth that is returned to its completely natural, native state, unaffected, unimproved by any kind of human touch. To them, a human imprint is anathema. So they're trying to remove all traces of human presence, human imprint, human influence anywhere and everywhere they can. And now they've got Donald Trump in their crosshairs because of his golf course in Scotland. Environmentalists are up in arms. I mean, it's been open for a couple of years. But they are complaining, listen to this, construction of the new golf course involved earthworks, planting of trees, greens and fairways, drainage, irrigation, and grass planting. Now, I've seen pictures of that golf course. It is beautiful. It is spectacularly beautiful, looking over the Scottish coast. What they've done to that course has improved its beauty, hasn't detracted from its beauty. It's augmented the beauty of that environment. But here's what outrages environmentalists. This is their complaint, quote, this has affected the natural morphology. They want everything left exactly as it was before man was even created. That's what they want. Well, wouldn't have gotten messed up till after Noah. But anyway, they want it looking like it did before man had an opportunity to improve it or to augment it. But remember that when you look at a golf course, I mean, you're going to laugh at me when I say this, but I absolutely mean this. And here's another environmentalist. It has been ruined from a virgin, undeveloped wilderness site into something that's relatively manicured. That's their problem. It's not that it's ugly, it's that it's manicured. It's that it shows traces of human care, of human augmentation. You know, people go to people to get their nails manicured every week. I mean, that's a sign of polish and sophistication, but that's a problem for environmentalists. Their holy grail is to have undeveloped wilderness, and if it's been developed, they want to return it to its undeveloped stage. And that's why Trump can't, he has expansion plans for that property, but they won't let him do it because it's going to affect the virgin, undeveloped pristineness of the site. Now, I want to set up this soundbite we're going to play after the break. This is a German cruise line. I'm reading from CNN here. They are facing outrage from all over the world after one of its employees shot and killed a wild polar bear in Norway after the animal attacked another of its employees. So this cruise ship was docked at Spitsbergen, which is the largest island on Norway's Svalbard archipelago. Repeat after me, Svalbard archipelago. So, and now we're dipping into Norwegian here on this program, covering, touching all the bases. Anyway, this is the tip end of the Svalbard archipelago, and this bear attacked a guard that was hired to go on shore before passengers to ensure that there aren't any polar bears in the area. Who would take a job like that? Yeah, we want you to go out first, just in case there's any man-eating polar bears out there.
Like
you
bait.
Go first.
Bait.
If you survive, we'll all get off the ship.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, it's actually, the law requires them to have polar bear guards because this is so common to encounter. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough that you got to have guards, 4 of them on every cruise ship that are there to protect passengers from polar bear attacks. And this guy was injured in the head by this polar bear. Had to be airlifted off the island, and of course environmentalists are just absolutely up in arms that a poor animal had to die to save this guy's life. Be right back.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
Australia has given citizens 3 months to opt out of their national health data system. Those who don't opt out by October 15th will have a national medical record created for them. About 20,000 people opted out the first day. Before this, only 6 million people, a quarter of their population, had chosen to be part of the system. But now consent has been eliminated. The only option is dissent. A cybersecurity firm calls the Aussie system an attractive honeypot of data for bad guys. In the U.S., consent has also been dismissed by HIPAA. The eHealth Exchange, a decentralized national system, is underway to permit data sharing nationwide without patient consent.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly e-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Don't forget, a week from today, first day of Stacy Washington, Stacy on the Right, will be in this time slot on American Family Radio. So don't be surprised if you turn on your radio next Monday at 2:05 and find yourself listening to Stacy on the Right. Now, I was talking about these cruise ships. They got to have a team of 4 guards prepared. They got to be armed so they can protect human beings from polar bears. That's why they exist. And by the way, on this island of Spitsbergen, there are more polar bears than people. Process that while you're thinking this story. More polar bears than people. And, it happens enough. You got to have, so you think about all these environmentalists complaining about the vanishing polar bear population. They're not vanishing. Their numbers are stronger now than they were in the 60s. They were maybe down to 5,000 polar bears in the mid-60s. Now there's maybe 25 to 30,000 polar bears. There's 13 polar bear communities. 11 of the 13 are growing, and the other 2, I believe, are stable. So the polar bears are not in trouble. Grizzlies, by the way, have been taken off the endangered species list. My home state of Idaho, they even had a drawing. One guy gets to go hunt a grizzly bear this year. So they did a drawing to hunt a grizzly bear. Now, again, and what you see here, this polar bear had the guy's head in his jaws. And that's what bears do. They go for the head. And they'll try to clamp their jaws around a guy's head. They got his head. This guy, polar bear, got his head in his jaws. And they managed to shoot the bear. So obviously released his grip on the guy. But they had to airlift the guy to a hospital. And apparently he's going to live, non-life-threatening injuries. But, the world is, and to me, the fact that the world is outraged over this is a really, really bad sign. Because it's a sign that what environmentalists are doing, and they're having some success at this, is that they are elevating the value of animal life while at the same time they are diminishing the value of human life. So they are elevating the value of animal life while at the same time diminishing the value of human life. Now, at some point, if you look at those on some kind of a vertical graph, well, you're elevating the value of animal life and you're diminishing the value of human life. You keep elevating animal life, keep diminishing human life, and eventually you'll get to the place where these things cross. And now you're actually placing a greater value on animal life than on human life. But we never, ever should do that, because the Bible is very clear that only man only, is made in the image of God. Man and man only has a spirit. Animals have a soul, they have a body, they have intelligence, they even have emotions, but they do not have a spirit. Only man has a spirit that can directly connect to God. So that makes them absolutely unique in all of the created world. So we never should diminish or elevate the value of animal life to the point where it begins to threaten or squeeze the value that we place on human life. Now, we had a caller to this program, and we got his name on the rundown. Larry. We had Larry. It's a blast from the past. This is early in the program. I don't know. This is 2012 or something, or 11
it was around there. We didn't have Facebook Live yet, so.
And we were still over in the other studio.
It's true. It's true, but it was memorable.
So anyway, Larry calls in, and I just been talking about, man, you see a grizzly bear, shoot that sucker. I mean, shoot that man-eater on sight. And Larry was absolutely appalled that I was so cavalier.
There were several people attacked, I believe, in Yellowstone, was it?
Yellowstone is where they have the grizzly attack. So we've been kind of responding to that story. So here's my conversation with Larry about shooting grizzly bears.
Okay, you mentioned earlier on your program that about grizzly bears.
Yes.
Go out and shoot the darn things.
Yes.
Okay. Where is that in the Bible?
Leviticus 26. Leviticus 26. God says, a land that is under my blessing, I will remove harmful beasts. You won't have to. Your children won't have to worry. Your livestock won't have to worry. Leviticus 26, Numbers 28, Deuteronomy 28.
Deuteronomy 28?
Yeah, Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28.
Okay.
Leviticus
you know,
26 says.
On these things.
Leviticus 26 says this. So let me read this to you, Larry. Verse 3 of Leviticus 26. If you walk in my statutes and observe my commandments and do them. Verse 6. I will give peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid, and I will remove harmful beasts from the land.
God will, not you.
Well, how's he going to do it?
I don't know.
Well, he does it by giving man the authority to shoot the puppies.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, Brian, and this is my understanding of Scripture. I'm a student of Scripture, have been for 40 years, longer. Okay. I believe that grizzly bears are good because God said everything He made is good.
Okay. Do you think it's good? So does that mean that we should allow them to eat people?
No, I don't think that.
Okay. Then you and I agree. Then we agree.
Why are they eating people?
Because they're hungry.
No. Is it possible that where is this happening?
Yellowstone.
Okay. Brian, Yellowstone's in your backyard. You're from Idaho. You know the terrain of that place.
Right.
That's bear country.
Right.
People are the outsiders. People are the intruders.
Oh, wait. So Larry, you're telling me that you're a student of Scripture?
Yes.
And you believe that man is an intruder on the earth?
No.
Larry, you need to go back and reread Genesis 1. You need to go back and reread your Bible if you think that you believe that man is an intruder, a parasite, an invader.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you just did.
No,
you said that man is an invader.
You live in an area, Idaho, Yellowstone National Park is right in your backyard. You know the terrain of that area. There are lots of wild animals there.
Right.
People who go to Yellowstone are cautioned not to get in the way of these animals.
Right.
I was there. I know.
Yeah, but the question, but Larry, the question is, let's say you hear all those warnings. Don't go here, don't go here, don't go there, because there might be bears. What if you're in a safe place and a bear comes anyway? What are you supposed to do then? Are you supposed to let him eat you because you're the invader?
No, leave. But the best thing is don't go where the bears are.
Well, what if they come where you are? That's the problem, Larry. They're coming where people are.
Then leave. Don't go into that area. You know that that's where they are, so don't go into that area.
Okay, so Larry, hold it. So you're saying that if there are grizzly bears anywhere, that human beings should just move.
There are not grizzly bears anywhere. There's a specific type of terrain they like. And
but you're saying anywhere where that terrain exists, that human beings should just leave. So we should close up Yellowstone National Park.
No.
We should shut it down. We should not let anybody go in there because that's where the grizzly bears are, Larry. That's where they are.
A lot of places you can go and never be in an area where grizzly bears are common.
Yeah, but you can't go to Yellowstone. You can't go to Glacier National Park and enjoy the beauty of God's creation.
Well, I did it.
But you're not supposed to, though. You just told me, Larry, you're not supposed to go where grizzly bears are.
No, I said in the areas where grizzly bears are. You're making a blanket statement.
Well, they're in Yellowstone. Larry, grizzly bears do not observe boundaries. You can't put a no trespassing sign up in front of a grizzly bear and expect him to read it and understand it and obey it. They're going to go where people are because people are food.
They don't have the mental capacity to do that.
Exactly. Larry, that's why you got to shoot them.
You don't have to shoot them.
Yes, you do, or they're going to eat you.
Okay, then
if it's a choice between me and the grizzly bear is going down.
Why?
Because he wants to eat me, and I am made in the image of God, and he is not.
So you being made in the image of God makes you better than a bear? Even though
yes.
God said bears are good.
Yes. It makes me of infinite more value than a bear.
You can't support that, Brian.
Yes, Larry.
You can't support that.
Larry, is man made in the image of God? Yes or no?
Yes.
Where does it say in the Bible that animals are made in the image of God?
It doesn't say that.
Exactly. Larry, I got to let you go because we're up against a hard break. I appreciate the call, Larry, and thank you for the give and take. Focal Point on AFR Talk. We'll be right back with a special guest in just 2.5 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
The grizzly bear is going down.
All right,
that was a classic. You know what? You got a lot of traffic on the left wing kind of. Well, even Rachel Maddow commented on this
on the grizzly bear
story.
Oh
yeah, there was.
Well, again, and see, that's part of the environment is these wild animals, and they're sacred to environmentalists. You can't harm them, you can't touch them, you can't shoot them, and that's what kind of Larry was. I mean, he idolizes these animals.
It's just plain common sense.
Yeah.
Why is it? Why do you have to shoot him? Because he wants to eat me. Come on,
Larry. Now, anyway, that was how that exchange went. So we'll see what happens. I mean, this cruise line, people are talking about boycotting this cruise line because they saved this guy's life. Just kind of crazy. Again, more polar bears on the main island of the Svalbard archipelago. More polar bears than humans there, actually. All right, I got a whole bunch of sound bites to burn, and Rob is looking at me. No, he's glaring at me right now, actually, would be the way to
with
put it.
that southern style glare, it's kind.
It's taken him 90 minutes to work himself up into a
bless his heart
into a pretty good mad on. So anyway, let's play clip number 2. We were talking about this guy nominating Donald Trump for the Nobel Prize for Physics because he's defying the law of gravity. His approval numbers keep going up. The more people shoot at him, the more they demonize him, the more they vilify him, the more they attack him, the more his numbers go up. So listen to Martha Raddatz. This is interesting to me. It's hilarious to me. Martha Raddatz on ABC. Listen to, she's talking here to a Washington Post national correspondent, Mary Jordan, and they're talking about Trump and the upcoming election. Let's listen.
They will vote for him, they're saying it as of today, because of conservative judges, tax cuts, lower regulation, and that to them is what he's doing, is why they're still on his side.
And then how do you counter that? And I've seen that on the road. Mary and I have talked about this too. I've seen that on the road as well. I don't care about Russia. I don't care about, the tweets. He's a means to an end.
This just cracks me up. Because here's Martha Raddatz. How do we counter Trump? How do we stop him? And this national Washington Post correspondent says, well, you know what they're talking about. He's nominated conservative judges. He's created tax cuts for 80% of the American people. He's lowering regulations, which spurs the economy. And Martha Raddatz is just pulling her hair out. How do we counter that? Well, Martha, there is no way to counter that. Why? Because people want conservative judges. They want judges that will bind themselves down from mischief by the change of the Constitution. They are enjoying their tax cuts, and they know that higher regulations is bad, lower regulations good for the economy. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. I'm reading through the Old Testament now, and I'm coming to places that are named that I see on our Israel tour every March. It's really fascinating to think that Jericho existed way back in the Old Testament thousands of years ago, and I can visit there today. The same can be said for Jerusalem. The Bible literally comes to life when you visit Israel, the Holy Land. Now, we're going in March. My wife Allison and I, we lead these tours every March. So if you would like to go with us, you need to go to the website and check it out. It's twholyland.com, twholyland.com. If you want a brochure sent to your mailbox, just call us at 800-FAMILIES, option 5. That's 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and we'll send you a brochure.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. Since Hurricane Katrina, 8 Days of Hope has loved and served people in need all over the country. In fact, we've had about 35,000 volunteers travel with us to love and serve people in need. In March, we were in Houston to help out Hurricane Harvey survivors rebuild their homes after the flooding that happened there last fall. Hundreds of thousands of families needed help then, and still today the need is there. We're looking for volunteers to go back with us. 8 Days of Hope 16 will be happening in Southeast Houston October 13th through October 20th. You can come for 3 days or all 8 days. It's free. We provide the food and lodging. If you can carry drywall, make sandwiches, pick up people from the airport, or deliver materials to the job site, we'd love for you to consider coming with us to Southeast Houston in October. 8 Days of Hope 16, October 13th to October 20th. Come and help us and be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Learn more and sign up to be a part of 8 Days of Hope 16 in Houston, Texas at 8daysofhope.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher. Brian J. Fisher.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name.
The Grizzly-free zone.
Grizzly-free zone here at American Family Radio. Now, let's grab clip number 3. I've got two clips from Donald Trump's weekly speech. He gives a weekly speech from the Oval Office every week, and here are two sound bites. I thought both of these were quite good. This is clip number 3, the first of 2 bites.
On September 11, 2001, America suffered the worst terrorist attacks in our history. The attacks were carried out by foreign nationals who exploited our lax immigration laws and defrauded our immigration system in order to murder nearly 3,000 innocent people. Following the attacks, Congress placed most immigration enforcement functions within a new agency known as the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, meaning ICE. One of the critical lessons of 9/11 is that immigration enforcement saves lives. We must enforce the rules against visa fraud, illegal overstay, illegal entry, and other immigration violations and crimes. And crimes they are. Believe me, crimes they are. These are the practices exploited by terrorists, drug dealers, child smugglers, human traffickers, gang members, and countless unknown and unregistered criminals to gain illicit access to our country and threaten our citizens. In fiscal year 2017 alone, ICE arrested more than 127,000 aliens charged or convicted of crimes inside of the United States. These were very serious crimes, and far too many of them.
So 1 year alone, ICE arrested, and remember the Democrats, they're campaigning on getting rid of ICE. They want to get rid of ICE. Well, if you think getting rid of ICE is a good idea, you have to ask yourself the question, would it be good or bad for America to have 127,000 aliens who had committed serious crimes to be loose in the country? Because that's what you would be asking for. If we have ICE, it's their job to arrest these people, to detain them, and to deport them or get them to court, whatever. But they would all be running loose if it weren't for ICE. So, you know, and Trump makes a good point. You think about 9/11, and there were immigration laws that were flouted and that were ignored and that these guys bypassed, and that's how they got into the country. You can't afford it. Can't afford to have lax. In today's world, you can't afford to have any loopholes in your immigration policy, immigration system, in your border defenses. Now, here is Trump talking about this movement to abolish ICE, clip number 4.
Yet leading Democrat politicians have called to abolish ICE. Nobody even believes it. They want to abolish ICE. In other words, they want open borders and more crime. And that's what you're going to get. You'll get more crime as you open up those borders. Last week, 167 Democrats in the House of Representatives refused to vote for a resolution to support the heroes of ICE. These are brave and great men and women. They're in the trenches every day, taking the fight straight to vicious gangs. They prey on our people. They hurt our people. They kill our people. Without the brave heroes of ICE, we would have no enforcement, no laws, no borders, and therefore we wouldn't even have a country.
All right, so Donald Trump, every word that he spoke there was absolutely true. You know, and the House of Republicans got this resolution together to support ICE. All it was is we support ICE. We like what they're doing. We recognize the importance of what they're doing. We want to support them. And only 18 Democrats voted for that. It's not even a law. Would have no effect, no impact on law or enforcement or anything. It's just a way of saying nice things about ICE. I mean, who do serve in a risky occupation because they can get shot at and killed. You know, they're rounding up drug cartel members. They're rounding up gang members and all that kind of stuff. And 167 Democrats just voted present. They didn't want to vote against it, but they did not want to vote for it. So they just voted present, just sat the whole thing out. So, I mean, you think there's no difference between Republican and Democrat. I mean, immigration, that alone is enough to radically distinguish between those two parties and making it clear to a conservative which party he needs to support that election season. Now, here is Tucker Carlson, clip 5. This guy's got a pretty bright take here on the Democrats' approach to immigration and where Americans fit and the scale of value to Democrats in their worldview, political worldview. Let's listen.
A lot of Democratic ideas didn't always work. Some were silly, but their focus was always clear. American citizens were the party's priority, and that is no longer the case. To the modern Democratic Party, Americans are an afterthought. Try to find a Democrat running this year, for example, on the opioid crisis or high energy prices, the collapse of public schools, the decline of the middle class. Hard to find one. Democrats are bored by these topics. What interests them is power. In order to win and maintain power, Democrats understand they need reliable new voters, voters who will support them obediently without making difficult demands like a higher standard of living. That's why the Democratic Party suddenly supports open borders so fervently. Immigration is really the only issue that matters to them because packing the electorate is the only way they can regain control of this country. Their goal is clear, and they will do or say anything to achieve it. Here, for example, is the governor of New York likening the Trump administration to Islamic terrorists for the crime of daring to enforce federal immigration law. Watch.
They are on a jihad to deport as many people as they can who they believe are not in the United States legally.
That's kind of an amazing thing that's bad. Yeah. Deporting people that are in this country illegally, if you're a Democrat, is bad. And not just any Democrat. This guy is the governor of New York, the second most populous state in the union. And he says deporting people who are illegally here and have committed crimes and sending them back to their home countries, there's something bad about that. That's wrong. That's bad. That's a terrible thing to do. So, I mean, you got a chasm here. I mean, this is a Grand Canyon chasm between Democrats and Republicans just on the immigration issue. And Tucker Carlson is exactly right. What matters to Democrats about immigration is every illegal alien to them is a Democrat voter in waiting. That's the only thing that matters to them. They just want votes. I mean, they claim that they're all about compassion. They want to allow these people to pursue their dreams in the United States. It's terrible that we won't let them come in and enjoy the benefit of the America. They don't care about that stuff at all. They just want to get these people in the country, then hand out a few crumbs in the welfare system to keep them addicted to Democrats so they'll vote for them when they get legalized. And now it's turning out you don't even have to be legalized to vote. They're voting in San Francisco. You don't have to be a citizen or even legally present in the United States to vote in San Francisco. There are a number of jurisdictions in Maryland that are doing exactly the same thing. Here is clip number 6, the second of 2 Tucker Carlson sound bites.
Now, Democrats claim that non-citizens, even illegal ones, have a right to vote in our elections. That is happening in San Francisco and in parts of the state of Maryland. By the 2020 election, it'll be happening in many other places. That's guaranteed. Now, you'd think congressional Republicans would be upset about this. Allowing illegals to occupy and run our country makes a mockery of citizenship. It's terrible for America, and it's a death sentence for the Republican Party. But nope, Republicans on the Hill seem okay with this. Here's one example. In 2014, the Obama administration changed the rules so that anybody claiming a threat from gang violence or domestic abuse could get asylum in the United States. The effect was to allow pretty much anybody to permanently enter this country provided they supplied the right story, and many, many did. Of course, that was precisely the point, to open the borders without saying so. Well, earlier this summer, Attorney General Jeff Sessions reversed the Obama rule. Now, House Republicans somehow, for some reason, are teaming up with Democrats to stop Sessions from doing that. Just yesterday, they tacked an amendment onto an appropriations bill in the House that would preserve the asylum rights of anybody who claims to be fleeing gang violence. That change would nullify any effort to secure our southern border. Mexico and Central America have plenty of gang violence. Now, all 150 million people who live there can cite that fact as justification to move here legally and stay permanently. When they get here, they'll find Democrats eager to give them the right to vote.
Okay, this is an important thing to observe, what the point that Tucker Carlson is making on this. Right now, you would think, if they are legitimately fleeing from gang violence, that sounds like a legitimate reason to grant them asylum in your country. Here's the problem. There's no way to verify that. How do you verify that? How do you prove that you're fleeing gang violence where you came from? There's no way to prove that. And so what people will quickly learn is if immigration officials are compelled to accept that story, regardless of how thin it might be, then everybody is going to show up at the border. Everybody that's coming here from Central America or from Mexico, they are all going to show up at the border with exactly the same story. I am fleeing gang violence. And they can make up whatever scene they've seen off the latest TV show and talk about that as if it happened in their hometown, and they're going to get carte blanche to come in and in short order become a Democratic voter. So the Republicans going along with this, it's suicide for them. Republicans, there's a reason why they're called the stupid party, and we're seeing it right now. Their view of immigration, it's just stupid. It endangers American security, it endangers American lives, and yet they just blindly cling to it. And, we'll see Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, the head of the Senate and the head of the House, both of them said this weekend, funding for the border wall is not going to happen. They've already made it clear they're not going to participate in any effort to provide funding for the border wall. So we are headed for a showdown, ladies and gentlemen. And the question is, who's going to blink? Is it going to be Donald Trump or is it going to be Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan? Who is going to blink? Now, here's one thing I will guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen. If you are a Trump supporter, if you want a wall built, if you want a secure southern border, you are going to have to contact your congressman and tell them they need to vote funding for a border wall or it ain't going to happen. Be right back.
To sharpen the biblical worldview of Christians and to share the good news of Jesus Christ. That is the mission of the Christian Worldview radio program. I'm host David Wheaton, inviting you to join us this Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, as we discuss all matters of life and faith from a decidedly biblical perspective. The Christian Worldview, Saturday mornings at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, right here on American Family Radio.
Who is God? What's He like?
How can we know? Your answer to these questions will impact your worship, discipleship, apologetics, and evangelism. Learn from Ravi Zacharias, Josh McDowell, Chip Ingram, and more than 60 other speakers at Southern Evangelical Seminary's 25th Annual National Conference on Christian Apologetics. It's October 12th and 13th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Get the early bird discount when you register by August 1st at ses.edu.
Hi, this is Jim Stanley, and we're partnering with the Ministry of Preborn to help save babies' lives through ultrasound. Here's how a nurse describes the power of an ultrasound.
Last week, just one example of a mom who came in was very abortion-minded, and when she saw the picture of her baby on ultrasound and heard that beating heart, it was a defining moment that just broke her. And she said, I just can't allow this baby to be killed.
By letting a mother hear her baby's heartbeat and see her baby in the womb, she will choose life 80% of the time.
I cannot tell you how many times a baby's life is saved through ultrasound. It's just an incredible tool.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to this last segment of today's edition of Focal Point American Family Radio. The number to call is 888-589-8840. Give us a call right now. Dial us up, 888-589-8840. One more time on that number. Give us a call right now. Get in the queue, 888-589-8840. By the way, the Canadian Broadcasting Company is reporting that therapists, psychotherapists, are seeing increasing numbers of patients who are suffering from anxiety as a result of Donald Trump's presidency. They're even calling it Trump anxiety disorder. Feelings of losing control and helplessness, lack of sleep, excessive use of social media. These are all of the symptoms of Trump anxiety disorder, a particular disorder among people of the snowflake persuasion. Now let's go one soundbite on socialism. This is clip number 9. This is Trevor Noah talking to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the open socialist. By the way, there's somebody running on a socialist agenda in Washington, young female, about the same age, running on the same platform as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and doing it in the Seattle area, might have a pretty good chance of succeeding in the 9th District in the state of Washington. So anyway, here is Trevor Noah asking Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, how exactly do you pay for all of this?
One of the things that we saw is if people pay their fair share, if corporations and the ultra-wealthy, for example, as Warren Buffett likes to say, if he paid as much as his secretary paid, 15%, if he paid a 15% tax rate, if corporations paid, if we reversed the tax bill but raised our corporate tax rate to 28%, which is not even as high as it was before. Right. If we do those two things and also close some of those loopholes, that's $2 trillion right there. That's $2 trillion in 10 years. And it's one of the wide estimates is that it's going to take $3 to $4 trillion to transition us to a 100% renewable energy economy. So we got $2 trillion from folks paying their fair share, which they were not paying before the Trump tax bill. Right. They weren't paying that before the Trump tax bill. If we get people to pay their fair share, that's $2 trillion in 10 years. Now, if we implement a carbon tax on top of that, so that we can transition and financially incentivize people away from fossil fuels. If we implement a carbon tax, that's an additional amount of a large amount of revenue that we can have. And then the last key, which is extremely, extremely important, is reprioritization. Just last year, we gave the military a $700 billion budget increase, which they didn't even ask for. They're like, we don't want another fighter jet. They're like, don't give us another nuclear bomb. You know?
I didn't even know we had Valley Girls in New York. They're like, we don't want another fighter jet. They're like, don't give us another nuclear bomb. Anyway, part of the problem here, number one, we didn't have a $700 billion increase in the military budget. That's the entire military budget, bigger than the year before, but there wasn't a $700 billion budget increase. So this woman really has got a very shadowy grasp on reality and financial numbers. But one of the things that she's all about is single-payer health care. This is what Bernie Sanders campaigned on. Government pays for everything. We pay our taxes to government. The government takes that money and provides health care for everybody. It's kind of Medicare for all is what it is called. Now, this is something that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez simply has no idea about what the cost of single-payer health care would be. Well, a study of it has been done. This is done, let's see, where's the source of this program? The Mercatus Institute at George Mason University. And they calculate that if you were going to implement the single-payer healthcare system advocated by Bernie Sanders, you know how much it would cost the federal government, well, taxpayers, over the next decade? $32.6 trillion. That's the George Mason's Mercatus Center did the study. $32.6 trillion to implement health care for all. I mean, that is twice our entire economy. That's what it would take to fund single-payer health care. So it's obviously a non-starter. It'll never happen. It's unaffordable. It's just not possible. It's simply impossible that you could make it work. In fact, it's consistent with other studies that were done about a Bernie Sanders plan, and there were a number of different studies about the cost of his plan, which is very similar, and they all range from $25 trillion to $35 trillion. So you can go to the bank on this. If we implemented it, it'd be a $32.5 trillion increase in the federal budget. All right. Well, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Artis in Michigan. Artis, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call, and I just want to make a comment about the wall and the Republican leadership.
Yes.
I don't think it's the Republican leadership that's stupid. I think they're very cunning and crafty and clever, like the Paul Ryans and the Mitch McConnells. They're going to benefit from allowing that wall to not be funded and not to be built, if that's what happens. And it's the voters that are stupid for re-electing these people over and over again, expecting something different to happen. And I just want to add, I already called President Trump, the White House, and commented that I would very much be in favor of shutting down the government if it means the wall gets built. I'm fine with that. Go ahead. See if anybody notices it's shut down.
Well, that's a great idea. If you want to do it, jot down the number to call. Well, I don't have the White House number right in front of me. I've got the congressional switchboard. Maybe we can get the White House number where you can leave a message for the president. And trust me, they count these. Phone calls count to them, so they'll count them up. If you leave a message and you tell President Trump, please stick to your plan to shut down the government over the wall, we'll support you. They'll make note of that.
Okay, it's...
You got it, Jeff?
Yeah, 202-456-1111.
202-456-1111. You can reach the White House comment line at that number. Okay, Artis, that is a great comment. You know, that's a pretty insightful comment. You know, it's not the GOP establishment that is stupid, because they're lining their own pockets. They're just playing us like chumps, and they're playing us for chumps. You know what she says? The stupid people. We're the stupid people. It's the GOP voters that send these same people back to Washington, D.C. year after year after year and expect to get something different out of them, which is the definition of insanity, to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. All right, let's go to Eric. Eric in Crum, Texas. Welcome, Eric. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
How you doing today, sir?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing fine. Just got a question for you. I keep hearing this, and I've talked to several conservative talk show hosts. Where are we going to get the money for this wall when we're 22+ trillion in debt?
Well, I can tell you where we can get it. Not a dime would come out of the pockets of taxpayers if we did it in the way that I've suggested from the beginning of this thing. You know, right now, Eric, the second leading source of income for the Mexican economy is remittances. This is money that's sent by people who are from Mexico, come to the United States and work here and send money they get from American employers back home to their family and friends in Mexico. It's about $25 billion a year that they're sending back to Mexico. Second biggest component of the Mexican economy. All we need to do is impose a 4% tax on those remittances. That's $1 billion a year for as long as we want to do it. And if the wall costs $18 billion, We just keep collecting that $4 billion a year that would come in through that remittance, because it's 4%. I think I'm figuring that right. There I am doing math on the fly, which is a hazardous occupation in my case. But anyway, the point here, Eric, is it would be easy to fund that wall by placing a 4% tax on remittances. We could get all of the billions of dollars we need for that wall without a dollar of it having to come out of your wallet or out of mine. All right, let's go to Matt, Texarkana. Matt, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I got a question, but before I ask my question, the left is really busted, and they're really disgusted, and I feel like that sometimes too. For instance, the women who are pregnant, up until the time that they discover that what's inside them is a baby by the heartbeat or whatever, I'm wondering what they were up until that time. Were they a slug? Were they a frog? What's inside that mama's womb?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make any sense to me. So,
yeah.
I mean,
well, and that's because,
that
Matt,
with an animal. Yeah,
and see, it doesn't make sense to you, Matt, because it doesn't make sense. It literally is a nonsensical proposition that thing becomes a baby at some point. Well, at what point does it become a baby? And there's no agreement among anybody. It'd be a purely arbitrary point where you decide that that's a baby inside a mother's womb. It's interesting. You look at the talking snake media, they'll slip up every once in a while, and a woman will be in the early stages of her pregnancy, some celebrity, and everybody will be oohing and awing about the baby she's carrying. They call it a baby. So when somebody wants it, it's a baby. When somebody doesn't, it's just protoplasm or a fetus. Doesn't make any sense. You're exactly right, Matt. All right, last call of the day. Christy, Huntsville, Texas. Christy, I got 15 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, I'll try to talk fast. Something I wanted to state that as we come close to the election, for people to really research these people that are running on a Republican ticket, that make sure that they truly do have conservative views.
Very good, Christy. Christy's exactly right. Sorry, I got to cut you off. We're out of time. But just because they say they're a conservative does not mean they are. Check them out. See you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family.